of the things I do to stay focused on the purpose of Advent is simply look at the hymns. I mean, we don't sing them any other time of the year. So, Come Thou Long Expected Jesus, O come, Emmanuel. Just use them as a meditation device. Very helpful for me.
Yes, I love the idea too. There's so many resources that we have available during that time. During the season of Advent is also a time that I treat almost as Lent. It's a time for a spiritual tune-up, for me to look at how am I doing with my spiritual practices and disciplines.
Same way with me. Those songs that you only hear at the time of the year to really reinforce tradition and focus back on faith. And along with that, reading the birth narratives from the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke as well.
Well, instead of a character, it's actually an inanimate object. It's the manger. I had the opportunity to go to the Holy Land and to be in the spot where they thought Jesus was born. And so I also look at it as a way that the manger, we are the current day mangers. And so as I think about the Christmas, the nativity scene, I usually will zone in on the manger.
I find myself identifying with the Magi because they come in to a story that in a lot of ways they don't even really understand they're a part of. But they're being used in a very significant way, and they don't even understand some of the implications, but by the end of it, they do. They know they're there for one purpose, and it's not even part of their culture, it's not part of their belief system, but they've become so key to it. I just find that so fascinating.
And for me, it would be the priest Zechariah at the very beginning of Luke, because when the angel had made the pronouncement about his wife getting pregnant, he said, basically, really, shut him down, he was silenced, and he had to be quiet for several months and sort of take it all in. I need to be quiet for several months, to be able to really grow spiritually.
My favorite of the four Gospels, oddly enough, since we're talking about Advent, is actually the Gospel of Mark, which does not have a birth narrative in it. But I love Mark for, most scholars would say it's the oldest of the four Gospels in the Bible. And to me, Mark has an immediacy about it. It has an urgency that the other Gospels don't really have. It's a lot shorter. And in fact, it ends with an empty tomb and not even an appearance, unless you look at some later editions of the resurrection. So to me, it just feels more raw. It feels very pressing in its presentation.
And I think for me, it's depending upon what stage of my life I'm in, because I've liked them all at different stages. But curiously enough, the one that speaks most to me now is John, which used to be my least favorite. But I just find it so mysterious. So many questions arise. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? That it just intrigues me.
John would be my favorite as well, basically because it starts from the beginning and in the beginning was the Word, and how important it is that we recognize who Jesus is, and not only knowing him, but also believing in him. And we do read that that's what they tell us what it is about, why this book was written. It was written for those of us so that we might believe in his name. And for me, that is just so intriguing to have. The Gospel of John. And then the language also is just a narrative that seems to just flow through the various areas of life. And so John would be the one that I go to most often for myself personally.
Well, this is going to be an odd answer to the question of who is the wisest person I've ever known, but it would have to have been my high school science teacher, who was not even a Christian. I mean, he said so, but his simple love and fascination with all the experiments he would do, and to see the fascination in his face when this would react with that, was basically a spiritual experience. That he honored creation, and he had the humility and the childlike faith, if you will, to honor the mystery of the world around. So I always admired him.
The wisest people, I would say, were my mom and dad. You know how as children we grow up and our parents know everything. We reach the age of teenagers, our parents know nothing. And then we soon come to realize just how wise they were. My mother taught me the gift of how to love God. She was always humming and singing and reading the Bible and taking us to church and the vacation Bible school. And if you lived in the house, you were going to go to church. And we began to enjoy that. Dad had the gift of loving people. It was nothing for him to go down the street to the truck stop and then you wake up and there's a stranger sitting in the house. Always had the doors open. In fact, our home was a home where you know that when you walk through the doors, you would be asked, would you like something to eat? And everyone was well fed and had great company. As I grow older, I recognized just how wise my parents really were.
That's wonderful. The wisest person I know, that's a tricky question to me. And I kind of look at it a little bit differently. I look at it, the bits of wisdom I pick up from everybody I know and everybody I've met. I know I have a close friend that any kind of business matter or professional thing, he always has such great insight, and I usually go to him. My parents also are on my list. I can ask my dad anything about mortgages or how to fix something or anything like that. And so it's always those little nuggets from different people that have that kind of thing they can bring forward. And it's not always something that's obvious, which is what I love about it.
One of the spiritual practices that I truly enjoy is to stand out by a body of water. It's something about being in that place, and before long I'm singing, "How great thou art, all nature and manifold witness." So meditation, being out in nature, is one of the spiritual disciplines that are just truly amazing to me. The one that I would find most of a struggle would be fasting at certain times. Now, when it's during Lent and Advent, that seemed easier, but then other times of the years with the ebbs and flows of ministry, I mean, sometimes gets in such a moving so quickly that I don't slow down and recognize that God is calling me to be still. And so I would say fasting would be the one. However, I have to force myself to do it. The others seem to come easier, but I have to force myself to fast. And the benefits of fasting, though, are so amazing. I don't know why I don't run to it rather than run away from it.
Well, I think the spiritual discipline I most enjoy is simply digging into the Bible. You know, and using that, and I enjoy the opportunities, of course, when I've been preaching and when I've written, but also simply being a Christian, to see what the Word says and then try to put it all together from all parts of the Bible and just to see and be amazed at how the Bible really is a unified whole of God's love. Now, the challenging discipline for me is silence. Now, my parishioners probably know that from when I've preached a lot, but simply to be quiet and trying to quiet the brain and that inner voice works for about half a minute. And then those intruding voices, but it's an ongoing challenge for me.
One I identify with the most, or one I like the most, is probably, like you, it's studying the Bible, reading it. I've learned languages in graduate school to be able to read the Bible in some of their original languages. And so study for me comes naturally. And it's always, you can look at the Bible, the same verse, 5 days in a row and take away 5 different interpretations.
Right.
The one I struggle with, honestly, for me is even evangelism, I guess you could say. And I think it's part of it because at my core with my own faith, I have such a questioning nature and even doubt. It's difficult for me to go out and share that because I'm always in a state of, I don't know. I hope you find something that works for you, and what I do works for me, I think, but I don't know for you. And so it's very hard for me to get over that bridge for a lot of people, honestly. Resources. The resource I would tell someone that's struggling to pray, and I have to give myself this own advice, is just make it as casual and personal as you can. There's no magic formula. There can be. There's a lot of great spiritual practice and spiritual wealth in having the same set of prayers and certain things like that. But think of it as a conversation. Think of it as you're talking to God's voice inside of you. And it's the most personal thing to be able to discuss in a way.
I agree with that. I think that is great advice to give. In addition to that, I take it a little bit further and say it is communion also
Yes.
with God, and not only communication. But as far as resources, first of all, grab somebody you know who prays and just ask them, will you pray for me, with me? And then there are tons of resources in our denomination through the upper room, through discipleship ministries. And then at other times, I found it very helpful just to read other people's prayers. That has been very helpful. Some of the works of Foster, other works, Howard Thurman, or some of the people, just reading those prayers then gives me sometimes the language that I might not be able to come up with myself. And then finally, we cannot forget the model prayer, the Lord's Prayer,
There
of
you go.
course, and just depending upon the Holy Spirit and saying, just as the disciples said to Jesus, teach us how to pray, that we can go to God and trust that the Holy Spirit will teach us how to pray.
And I would say that the greatest resource is to follow this commandment. Go take a walk. Take a walk. Go outside, open your eyes, open your ears, be very attuned to just the wonders of creation and the mystery of it. Let your voice naturally talk to the Creator as if to a parent.
Yes.
As you see the wonders of a bug going across the road, or a butterfly, or what have you. And at the end with the Lord's Prayer. That sort of says it all, I think. I think one of the difficulties of explaining the Holy Spirit to someone new to the faith is that we think of the Holy Spirit as an it. You know, we'd have no problem with Father and Son, but the Holy Spirit becomes an it. I think the best way is to just imagine a guide. Imagine that you're in the shallow end of a swimming pool, and the Holy Spirit is the one who says, don't worry, trust me, I'm going to take you to the deep end. It's beautiful there. You're going to see a lot of things. It's the Holy Spirit is the power and the presence of someone who loves us and says life is a lot deeper than we can imagine. Come follow me.
I think for me, the Holy Spirit, that's a great way to put it. It's the voice inside of you that can help guide you. It's that almost intangible thing, even more so, honestly, in a lot of ways. As you say, we can imagine a God, but this Holy Spirit, it's a little more difficult, and it's something you just have to listen to and trust inside yourself.
Absolutely. When I think of the Holy Spirit also, I don't know how many of you all remember Flip Wilson. You might be a little bit young. With the character of Geraldine, and that sometimes there was an angel sitting on one side and a demon on the other. But the angel is that voice that is speaking to us and trying to encourage us. The Holy Spirit is like, I've heard it described as like electricity. That a son asked his father, how do you explain it? And he took him to a power plant. And he said, you can't see electricity, but you know it's what turns the lights on for us. And so it is the power. Another way I've heard it described was that it's like the sun rays. You can't see the sun rays, but you can feel the power of the sun rays on your skin. You know what that can do for us. And so I try to just use analogies of the Holy Spirit being that voice that you hear, that we often say it's mother's wit or it's intuition. That's the Spirit speaking to you. So let's acknowledge those times where it's God speaking to us. And so that's how I try to explain the Spirit to someone who's new to the faith.